Hi, everyone. This is Christy Rich, and this is Holistic Me Tea. This is a brand new TV show on YouTube to empower women with their health and wellness. I am your host. I am Christy Rich. I am a holistic health expert. I have been a holistic healer for over 18 years and a researcher for about 25 years, and I absolutely love the work that I do. So, as you may know, I am writing a 3-book series on holistic childbirth around the world. That is my passion. I will let you know when the series is released. And again, I have interviewed over 70 moms and childbirth experts around the world for this series. So super excited to bring that to you. But until then, now I am bringing health experts from all around the world to educate you, to empower you, to inspire you, and to give you some health tips. So today I'm very excited to bring on a guest from New Hampshire, and I will introduce you to Adrienne Irizarry. Let me read her bio for you. Adrienne Irizarry is an East Asian medicine practitioner using non-invasive approaches to restoring harmony and health in women's bodies. She uses her expertise as a certified pelvic steaming practitioner, certified Acutonics practitioner, herbalist, and Chinese nutritional therapist to educate and empower women to heal their bodies naturally. Featured as a 2023 Health Industry Disruptor in Apple News and Grit Daily, she's a faculty member for the Acutonics Institute of Integrative Medicine, founder of the Tao of Women Institute, and hostess of the Reproductive Rebel podcast. Wonderful. Welcome, Adrienne.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so happy to interview you. We have a lot to discuss today. So today we're going to discuss some of my favorite topics, women's health and wellness. We're going to also talk about the pregnancy journey. So for those who are not familiar with you and the work that you do, what is your story? Why do you do the work that you do today?
Actually, a lot of it has to do with the pregnancy and fertility journey. So when this opportunity to talk with you arose, I felt like it was completely in alignment, particularly because that is a lot of my origin story.
Wonderful.
So I came to this work. Actually, you know how life kind of leads you in the direction that you're supposed to go in? I feel like a lot of my life has been exactly that. I struggled with endometriosis as a young person. That really controlled my life, and the Western allopathic solution for dealing with the pain and disharmony that I was dealing with was putting me on birth control, which landed me with a heart attack at 25.
Wow.
Yeah, I was really, really fortunate that the woman who was running the emergency room that night, her first question to me was, "Are you on birth control?" And she goes, "You will make it out of here tonight, Adrienne." She goes, "But," she's like, "throw the packet straight in the trash and don't ever take it again." So
Wow. Wow. Let's
yeah.
unpack that, everyone. Okay, that's a lot to take in right now. So let's go back and go into a little bit more detail with your story, because this is probably shocking for a lot of people watching to hear that you were on birth control and that led to having a heart attack. So let's go back a little bit. So when were you put on birth control? When did you start having symptoms for endometriosis? And what is endometriosis for those who are not familiar with it?
Endometriosis is when all of the menses, when you are having your period, it should all completely exit the body, and lesions actually migrate in the abdominal cavity and sometimes in other parts of the body as well. And when it's that time of the month and they are triggered by hormones, they bleed, and it can create a lot of pain. It can sometimes connect internal organs, which makes pain in other places. So it's not uncommon to have endometriosis and have pain with bowel movements. That's probably one of the most common
Oh, yes.
symptoms that I see with people.
Yes.
Although I've had clients who have had surgery to find that they had lesions near their lungs. So really,
Wow. I
yeah, it
had
can
no
kind of migrate
idea.
anywhere. Yeah.
That's crazy. I think a lot of people are not aware of this. So thank you so much for educating us.
It's far more common than people realize. Extreme period pain, unfortunately, is becoming a very common experience for a lot of people.
Yes.
Endometriosis often is only diagnosed by laparoscopy. Sometimes it can be diagnosed with ultrasound, but most of the time they will do an exploratory laparoscopy to confirm.
Mm.
in my case, they were like, you have all of the symptoms, you know, and there are a lot of people who come into my practice that have a similar story where the doctor goes, yep, you have all of the makings of endometriosis. We can do a laparoscopy, or we can just treat you as if you have it. And at the time, that was how they chose to work with me because I was so young. So
How old were you?
I was 14.
14.
So generally when people have issues with endometriosis, they'll start seeing issues with their period like right out of the gate. And within 6 months after my period started at the age of 12, I was having a lot of pain, and it was starting to affect my ability to live.
Yeah. Wow.
It wasn't quite taking me out of school until I was like high school age, but it was definitely creating issues being able to focus at school. I was having
Mm.
headaches. My whole, like, I felt like just above my belly button to my knees, everything would just ache whenever I had my period.
Wow.
Flow was heavy, very heavy for a young person. So the solution that the doctor gave me was putting me on birth control at 14.
Wow. And I'm sure
Um,
you did try some other things before going on birth control. I'm sure you tried over-the-counter medication to see if that would help, right? And nothing did.
Yeah, painkillers didn't touch it. No amount of Tylenol or Midol. There were lots of
Mm.
commercials for Midol during that
Yes,
period of my life. If
I
that
remember my doll.
is,
Yeah.
I was gonna say dating me at all.
Yeah.
But you know, I tried Midol, I tried all of those things, and the Midol commercials actually stick very vividly in my mind
Do they
because
still make my doll? I haven't heard anybody say my doll in a long time.
I don't know.
Okay.
I haven't been on the like pharmacy aisle. I'm sure they probably do, but
Okay.
during that period of time, I feel like it was like every other commercial on TV
Hmm.
during that time frame, and it never provided me the relief that they promised on TV, which used to make me really grumpy. Of course, I'm a
Mm.
teenager. I'm running it.
And you said
I
you were
was
grumpy.
Yeah, I was grumpy because the results that they had promised in the commercial on TV was just not my reality.
Yeah.
So, fast forward, my mom, you know, felt bad that I was suffering the way that I was. And, you know, she made her decisions with as much information as she had at the time.
Right.
And the doctor suggested birth control, and I didn't really know much about it, and I wasn't sexually active at the time, so like I was just like, pain relief, sure, I'll do whatever you tell me to do. So
Exactly.
I
And
started taking birth
did
control.
did your doctor inform you about any possible side effects?
No.
No.
And I look back at that now, and it was more a conversation of, this will make you not bleed as much as you were bleeding now, which means there will be fewer lesions and you'll have less pain.
Okay.
And I just went with it. There are leaflets that are put into medications like that. And knowing the history of birth control development at this point, I realized that there were some very courageous women that fought to have those leaflets put into the
Yes.
medication packets.
Yes.
And yet, a lot of us don't know that we should really take the time to read them. And we
Yes.
aren't fully informed of all of the risks at the time that it's given to us, because it's expected that either we are going to be an informed consumer and take the time to read the leaflet, or talk to the pharmacist about it.
Or the
Neither of
doctor,
those.
your doctor will give the information. A lot of people assume your doctor will give the information that you need to know.
That is true. That is very true. And none of those things, none of the above took place for
None of the
me.
above. Yeah.
So I just continued taking it. I slowly started to see my weight creep on. I wouldn't say that I was clinically depressed, but my emotions were definitely more in a depressed state. It took a
Mm-hmm.
lot more to make me feel alive and vibrant
Mm-hmm.
when I was on the medication, although it came on so slowly that it wasn't until I was off it that I realized that that's what had been happening.
Interesting. And how long
Mhm.
were you on it for?
I was on it 10 years when I started having chest pain.
Wow.
I had been at the gym the day before. I was a competitive kickboxer at the
Oh,
time. I
wow.
had been at the gym lifting weights and doing some cardio training. I had been at the gym like 2 hours the day prior. I woke up the morning of the actual heart attack itself, and I was having pain and numbness and tingling in my arm and in my
Yeah.
chest. And it
Mm-hmm.
was like slow. It was like one of those things where you're like, oh, did I pinch a nerve? Like, did
Right.
I do something to it?
Yeah. Did I
And
move in the
so,
wrong direction and now I've got to recover a little bit? Yeah.
well, and as a 25-year-old woman, so I was coming into my 11th year of taking it as a
Wow.
25-year-old woman.
Wow.
Like, I didn't even think like I could be having a heart attack right now because I was a young person
Yeah.
and I
You were
was a
young.
physically fit person.
You were
And like,
active.
yeah.
Yeah. And you didn't
And
have any other health issues, correct?
no, I didn't, or at least that I wasn't aware of at the time.
Okay. And
So
a lot of people, just to interrupt you really quickly, are not aware that a heart attack can start with tingling in the arm or pain in the arm. A lot of people assume it's just in the chest. So this is also very important for people to know that there are more symptoms with a heart attack than just chest pain.
yes. Well, and that's actually as the day went along, because I just, toughed it out and I went to work. And as my day progressed, I was like, ooh, I am having more pain and not less. Because I was
Mm.
thinking first thing in the morning, if I pulled something, as I keep moving, I'm going to feel better.
Right.
But as the day progressed, it actually got worse. So by the end of the day, I called my doctor's office and I said, listen, I'm having pain in my arm. I'm having tingling in my fingers. I have discomfort that's starting to be kind of gripping in my chest.
Mm.
And I said, do you think I could be having a heart attack? And they're like, well, you're too young. You're probably having a panic attack. Okay. So totally gaslit. And
Mm.
it wasn't until I mentioned that I had pain in my back as well that the person's tone changed on the other side of the line. And they were like, you know what? Maybe you should go get that checked out. I think you could
Wow.
be having a heart attack.
Wow.
But when I got to the emergency room, I experienced the same kind of gaslighting. You're a really young person.
Oh, no.
You're probably just having a panic attack, just go home, relax
Oh,
kind of
no. They
thing.
said go home?
Yeah, and they
Wow.
actually weren't really open to triaging me at the time.
Wow.
And I sat in the waiting room for almost 2 hours, and I kept going up to the desk and saying, listen, like, this is getting worse. Like, can somebody please see me? And I'm not the kind of person that like
It's
really,
pushy.
yes, I'm not
Yeah.
pushy and I'm
Yeah.
not abrasive,
Yeah.
right?
You're a
And
nice
so
person. Yeah. Kind-hearted person.
So but I got to the point where I started getting really scared.
Yeah,
And
of
I'm like,
course.
okay, well, if I wasn't having a panic attack, I'm going to start having one now if somebody doesn't start to see me. So,
Right.
they have like those big, heavy double doors that like people come out of when they come out of the
Yes.
emergency room.
Yes. Yes.
Well, they opened to release a person out of it. And I snuck through the doors and I went straight to the nurse's station. And of course, security, people come running at me because I'm now the weirdo walking around in the back there that shouldn't be there. And I
Right.
went straight to the nurse's station. I said, with all due respect, I said, I've been waiting in this emergency room for 2 hours. I'm having increasing symptoms. I think I'm having a heart attack. Can somebody please just triage me and take a look at me and
Good for
see if
you.
like I need to go home or if
Yeah.
I need to be here. Like I need
Right.
somebody to take a look at me because I assure you this is not normal.
Yeah.
And the woman who was running the emergency room that night, I will never forget her face. I wish for the life of me I could remember her name because I would send her
Mm.
the biggest thank you.
Oh,
Because I am here today because of her.
we're sending her a big virtual thank you. If she's watching this or anybody knows her, yes, we thank her so much.
She came over and she had to do that tough mama like what's going on over here kind of thing, and I started explaining what was going on and you could see like her expression completely change.
Wow.
And she's like, are you on birth control? And my answer was yes. And then all of a sudden things started moving really fast. She started barking out orders to people. I found myself on a gurney whizzing down the hallway. They hooked
Wow.
me up to an EKG machine and I was having what was put in my chart as a cardiac episode.
Cardiac episode. They don't write cardiac arrest, huh?
Well, it didn't stop. My heart
Oh,
didn't stop, but I was
oh,
having a regular heartbeat and things
okay.
like that. My blood pressure was 152 over 101. So for somebody who was in good shape,
Oh,
that was very alarming.
yeah, it's high.
And the pain got significantly worse in my chest and in my back. And so they sent me home with some medication. She told me, don't ever take birth control or any sort of hormonal thing ever again, because it
Wow.
clearly does not respond well to your body. And literally within a week, it was like nothing had ever happened. And I've had no issues since. I've also
Wow.
never been back on birth control.
Wow. Okay, this is an amazing story for people to hear. Let's unpack this a little bit more. So, one, the nurse in the ER, she was aware that this is happening. She
Mm-hmm.
asked you as the first question, are you on birth control? So, she's
Mm-hmm.
seen other women come in having heart attacks, and the reason was they were on birth control. So she told you never to take it again. And after you stopped taking it, you didn't have any more issues, any more heart
Mm-hmm.
attacks, tingling, pain in the chest, nothing.
Elevated blood pressure? No, nothing
Wow.
like that.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yep.
So, this is a lot for people to take in. A lot of people, again, assume that the medication that's out there is safe for us to take. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people think that if their doctor puts them on something and they're on it for several years, well, they must know that it's safe to take it for several years instead of just for a year. So, let's go into a little bit more detail. Um, did you have any indications that would counteract the birth control? Were you a smoker? No.
Nope.
And you didn't have any other health issues.
No, I didn't smoke. I didn't drink.
You didn't
I
have high blood
actually,
pressure before.
no, I didn't. And I had really treated my body very reverently because I was a competitive athlete at that point.
Mm,
And so, like, I was very careful about how well I ate, what I ate, exercise, stretching. Like, I really was in about the most tip-top shape
wow.
of my whole life at that
Amazing.
point. And to see how my competitive edge changed after I went off of birth control. My breathing was better, my stamina was better.
Oh,
Now, what I wasn't prepared for was how my now changing hormonal cycle, because a lot of people assume that you have a period when you're on birth control. You don't. You have a
no.
withdrawal bleed. The
Right.
pill arrests your expression of hormones throughout the whole month, because the whole purpose is to have you not get pregnant. And we use it a lot in Western culture for a wide array of other gynecological issues, but its fundamental foundation was to keep people from being pregnant. So, because of that, I wasn't experiencing the full spectrum of my hormonal expression. And I didn't realize how that was going to change competition for me, because
Mm,
in the week leading up to my period, all of a sudden I felt like my stamina tanked. I couldn't compete when I was bleeding because I didn't have the stamina. But
mm,
man, get me like 3 to 5 days before ovulation and the week after ovulation, and I won every time.
wow.
So, and I look back on it and I didn't see the connection at the time because I didn't know how much the change in my hormones were going to influence how my body showed up as an
Mm,
athlete.
mm.
Um, so that is a big part of my story. Fast forward about a year and a half after I had my heart attack, I got pregnant with my daughter.
Oh, can I
I had
go
a
back one more questions? A few more questions before we
Sure,
get there. I do want to hear the pregnancy journey. I'm all about hearing about the pregnancy journey.
sure.
So, what kind of birth control were you on? Were you on hormonal birth control?
Yes.
And it was a pill. So let's get on to the pregnancy journey then. Go ahead.
So I had a beautiful pregnancy with my daughter. I had a home birth with my daughter, and
Oh, wonderful.
everything. I mean, 8.5 pounds, 21.5 inches long. Like, she was a nice, healthy girl. And
And this was a
I
year after your heart attack.
Yep, I got pregnant with her almost a year to the day after my heart attack. It was in the same month. Actually, I had the heart attack in December of 09,
Mm,
and I got pregnant in December of 10. And I had her in September of 11.
And you didn't have any
And
problems conceiving then? Because I know some women who are on birth control for a while, then they have problems conceiving, but that was not an issue for you.
yeah, and it wasn't an issue and it wasn't an ambition at the time either. It was kind of a surprise.
Okay, okay.
Um, so after I had her, however, I had a very rough postpartum recovery.
Okay.
There was a lot of bleeding. I had as much help as I could, although if I could turn back the hands of time, I would have had a postpartum doula and I would have
Yes.
had other supports that I now know exist, but I didn't know existed at the time. That bleeding was such a problem for me.
Wow. How long did you bleed for?
I stopped bleeding with nursing, but once I stopped nursing, I bled for like 6 months straight.
Wow, after nursing.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
And
Interesting.
I didn't have like, they tried all kinds of things. Like they tried an IUD and I literally bled it out, and they
Oh,
wanted to
wow.
use Lupron. And I said, well, listen, like, I don't know
What
what
is
that's
that?
going
What is
to.
Lupron?
Lupron is a shot that they give people that essentially creates a false menopause. And
Oh,
it like and they do it sometimes in heavy bleeding situations, to try to get bleeding to stop. And I was afraid how that was going to affect my hormones. And so
yeah.
I didn't want to go that route. They even suggested ablation, which is where they stick a tool into your uterus and they cauterize the inside of your uterus to stop bleeding. And I
Wow,
said, well, I don't
crazy.
want you to remove my ability to decide to have another child by doing
Yeah.
this. Like there has
Yes.
to be another solution.
Yes.
So this is actually how I found Chinese medicine.
Oh,
And within maybe 6 weeks after starting to work with an acupuncturist who put me on really strong herbs, the bleeding finally came to a stop.
good. Good.
And I was just completely enamored with this whole process. And what is this magic? I must know all the things about it.
Yes. Yes.
And I was so fortunate to have the most incredible practitioner who like fueled my curiosity and gave me references that I could read. And like,
Wonderful.
I would take the books home. I would devour the book. I'd go back for my next appointment. She goes, you read that entire book cover to cover? I was like, yes, ma'am, I did. And then I had tons of questions. And so like
Good
the
for
whole time
you.
that she was in the room, she was just wonderful about fielding questions that I had, because I was just hungry for
Mm.
information about it all. So
And did
that,
she explain why you were having this long bleed? Did she understand from a Chinese medicine perspective?
yes. Yes, I hadn't been able to rebuild my chi in an appropriate way after delivery. One really unfortunate thing about Western culture is that we don't have systems in place to allow mothers to really stay with their babies as
Yes.
long as they really need to. I mean,
Yes.
we don't separate puppies before they're 8 weeks from their mothers. Like, why do we do this to human babies? Like, it's
It's very sad. It's all about rush
so.
back to work and productivity. Yeah, it's very sad.
Well, and that was part of the issue. Like I had utilized all the paid leave that I had, which I was
Oh,
so fortunate that I had an incredible boss that at the time let me save every stitch of my sick time and vacation time. And that gave me like 8 weeks of paid vacation.
good.
But once that was exhausted, I didn't have a choice. I had to go back. And
Right,
so
right.
going back essentially prematurely, like I really needed probably another month home, no less than that. And I didn't have it. And I was rushed back into a very high tempo, demanding position. And again, had an incredible boss. I don't think that this would have even been as gone as well as it had gone if I had had anyone else except him as my supervisor. He was amazing.
Mm,
But he was really accommodating for me to, pump at work. And when I needed to take my lunch break, I would go down to the lunchroom and literally take a nap on the couch and things of
mm,
this nature, just to try to like take care of myself as much as I possibly could.
yeah.
But it was hard. It was really hard. And there was a lot of rushing around. I was struggling to make milk, like all of those demands on my
Oh,
system. It was just too much.
there's a
And
lot going on. There's a lot going
mhm.
on. So you had a baby, your first baby, and you had some issues with nursing. You weren't making enough milk. You were bleeding for 6 months after you stopped nursing. You didn't know why. You didn't want to go back to taking these medications that could possibly affect your hormones, possibly contribute to other chronic conditions. And you didn't feel like you had any answers, any other choices. And then, of course, that must have been very emotional going through this time, this unknown of not wanting knowing what to do, how to help yourself. And when you're bleeding for so long, you must have felt really fatigued and depleted, and that must have affected you mentally as well.
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't have said it better. I just felt like I was dropping the ball in every facet of my life. And so
Mm,
when I started working with the acupuncturist that I was working with, and she just breathed so much life back into my body on so many levels.
wonderful.
And that experience made me want to help other people not experience what I experienced.
Great. Wonderful. I love it. What a beautiful story you have. It's so rich. There's so much there. So thank you so much for sharing your story while you do the work that you do. So did you then start to develop symptoms of endometriosis once you went off the birth control? Did that return again and did you struggle with that for a while?
Yes, I did. I Endometriosis is something that doesn't ever get solved. It's something that you have to manage lifelong.
Mm,
And yes, I was having a lot of issues with my cycle afterwards. My period was heavier after I had my daughter, than it had been prior. When I asked a doctor about it, they were like, "Oh, well, you had a baby. That's normal."
oh no.
Well, actually, it's not normal.
No, it's
I
not.
know that now, but I didn't know that at the time.
Yeah.
So like I had been met by statements like that. And then again, fast forward a few more years, I met the love of my life, and he and I got married, wanted to have a baby together, and started experiencing recurrent miscarriage. And I do
Oh,
think that some of that recovery or lack thereof was part of why we struggled there in the beginning. But it was probably the biggest catalyst to move me into women's health and fertility work. I was working in Chinese nutritional therapy as a passion project while I was working my responsible W-2 big girl job. But that wasn't filling my soul the way
mhm.
that this side project was. And so I did end up making the transition. My husband was amazing and took on extra overtime so that I could get my practice started. But really,
Wonderful.
like that drive to answer the fertility question, like, why am I struggling with this when I had been through tons of doctors and I had every physical exam and blood work test and everything that you could possibly imagine.
Mm.
And I had seen 3 different fertility specialists, and all of them had said, well, your results are fine. His results are fine. I have no idea why you're not getting pregnant.
Oh, gee.
Right. But
Yeah,
I'm
and a
like, there
lot of
has to
women
be a
get that.
why. Oh, gosh, yes. There are
Yeah.
so many that get that as an answer. And
Yes.
Chinese medicine has an answer to that question.
Yes. Yes.
And
And how does Chinese medicine look at it differently than Western medicine?
Western medicine is really geared towards acute care. I mean, really and truly, their toolkit excels in the acute care arena. So if I'm having an ectopic pregnancy, I want a super skilled OBGYN to be able to save my life. But when it
Yes.
comes to like pattern recognition in a body, that's really where Eastern medicine excels. Thousands of years of observing bodies and tongues and body patterns and all of these
And
things.
the whole system, how the whole system works together, not just focusing on where the symptom is and saying, okay, what's going on with your liver, what's going on with your digestion, but the whole system, correct? And the
Oh,
meridians,
absolutely.
energetically
Yes.
too.
Energetically, emotionally, spiritually, there's,
Yes.
when it comes,
Holistically. Yes.
yes, we're not ingredients in a cookie recipe. you mix all of that together, and we are the alchemical experience of all of those ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that I really love about working as an East Asian medicine practitioner is it acknowledges, recognizes, and really understands the interplay between the spiritual body, the emotional body, and the physical body. And
Mm-hmm.
at the time, there was some unresolved frustration that was part of the picture.
Yeah.
Um, Chinese medicine believes heaven and earth come together to create humanity.
Mm.
And there was a hiccup in that process happening for me. And it wasn't just physical. And so, I working through my own experience, I learned a lot that I was able to offer other couples. Like I was at a
Wonderful.
Christmas party over the weekend, and my heart was so happy because there were 4 babies at that party that I helped to bring into the
Oh,
world.
wonderful.
Right?
Congratulations. That's exciting. That's exciting to see. Yes.
It was so cool. And it's one of those things that's like, this is why I do what I do, because I didn't want other people to feel the heartache that I did, and to suffer the way that I did, because
Yeah.
like, being able to bring a baby into the world is supposed to be like the most natural, normal thing that a woman can do. And when you meet hurdles around that, it really takes a toll on your heart, on your self-esteem, how you feel
Yes.
about yourself as a person. When you go
Yes.
through a loss, you feel very isolated and alone. Like,
Yes.
there's so much of that is a part of the process that we don't talk about, we don't acknowledge, and you feel like you're dealing with all by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And my practice, Moon Essence, is a space that you can express all of those things and be really held with where you are in your journey, and that only helps enhance your fertility experience.
Yes. Yes. We need the support. We need to support mind, body, and spirit. And as you said so beautifully, in Western medicine, they look at the physical body. What's wrong with the physical body? Why are you not able to conceive? But there's so many other aspects to take in besides just the physical body. So let's get into the work that you do, how you help your clients. You talked a little bit about it. Can you share more about the work that you do with your clients? So you
Yes,
specialize in fertility, and you tell us what you specialize in to help women.
yes. So I specialize in holistic women's health. When I first started this practice, I was very fertility focused, and I do still take on a lot of fertility clients because, we're struggling with that fertility journey now more than ever for a lot
Yes,
of reasons
we
in
are.
our modern day world.
Yes.
Um, but I'm also seeing a big influx recently of women hitting those perimenopausal years and going, oh my goodness, what's happening to me right now?
Yeah.
Because they're totally unprepared for the kind of energetic, mental, and emotional changes that come along with the physical changes when they start their perimenopausal journey. So
Yes.
I work with the entire women's health continuum, helping girls get their cycle started in a healthy way,
Mm.
dealing with menstrual issues as they arise for people. Obviously, with a background in endometriosis, I'm pretty good with endometriosis,
Yes, of course.
polycystic ovarian syndrome, and
And
so on
what
and
is
so
that? Can you
forth.
explain what that is?
Polycystic ovarian.
Yes, yes. I
Okay.
know a lot of people are being diagnosed with that, PCOS. Can you describe what that is for those who are not familiar with it?
Yes. So a lot of people, and that's actually something to your point that I kind of want to address, is a lot of people are getting a PCOS diagnosis, but not everybody actually does have PCOS. A lot of
Mm,
times it's the androgen hormonal test that is the determining factor whether they have PCOS or not. You can have cystic ovaries and not have PCOS, because PCOS is a hormone imbalance, and there a lot of times you're also going to see male pattern facial hair in
mhm.
someone who is truly polycystic ovarian syndrome. Um, but from a Chinese medicine perspective, there's actually 2 different body patterns that PCOS can show up like. So when you go to a Western doctor, oftentimes they will look for you're a little overweight, or you're carrying extra weight, you have cysts on your ovaries, you must have polycystic ovarian syndrome. Yes, there is an insulin resistance component to PCOS, but that isn't the only body pattern that will yield a PCOS diagnosis. I've seen some very slender people who do have polycystic ovarian syndrome. So it is a hormonal imbalance. From a Chinese medicine standpoint, it could have a kidney yin or a kidney yang pattern, meaning that you're deficient in either yin or you're deficient in yang energy. And that's part of how the pattern arises. One of the hard parts about explaining Chinese medicine is it's a little bit like a weather report. In some ways, it makes it easy to explain, and in other ways, it's like a completely new vocabulary to people.
Yeah, and it really
So,
goes deep. People do not realize if they've not experienced it, it really is very deep science. So there's a
yes.
lot to unpack if you really go deep.
Yes, absolutely. So, so polycystic ovarian syndrome, you can have cystic ovaries and not have this hormonal imbalance. And I think it's important to make that delineation. People who have fibroids, like I work with all of that in my practice. I
And
work with
how is PCOS normally treated by Western medicine?
by Western medicine. There sometimes oftentimes there's a hormonal component. I've seen a lot of people with PCOS or suspected PCOS that are put on birth control as a way
Yes,
to
me
kind of
too.
manage symptoms.
A lot of people, and from a young age, just like you were,
Yes.
teenagers.
Yep, endometriosis and PCOS both. At one point in my life, they were questioning whether I had PCOS because I was as active as I was, but I wasn't really losing weight. I look back at it at this stage in my training and in my life, and I actually think it had more to do with the birth control and taking the birth control at such a young formative age.
Yes.
And managing my weight has been a project most of my life, where I never had any issues at all prior to going on the birth control. I was a
Mm,
very slender person.
mm,
Um, so, when you disrupt hormones and the expression of hormones in some way, there are consequences to those disruptions.
yes.
And it's not something that we talk about nearly enough.
No, no, there's so many people recommending synthetic hormones to treat something, and then they
Mhm.
don't realize that people taking them that this can lead to other issues and it's not really helping your hormones. So there's a lot to unpack here. I could talk with you all day. Again,
Maybe
you're
we'll
speaking
have to
my
do a
language.
round two.
What'd you say?
So maybe we'll have to do a round two.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to do a round two because there's too much, and I want to respect everybody's time listening and make sure um, we get everything on this episode that we wanted to talk about. So, also just curious, did you have any you okay, let me go back. Too many questions in my brain. So you had the fertility issues, and then were you able to treat that again through an East Asian lens? Did you find understanding? I think you said a little bit about the frustration and stress and the mental component. Were you then able to conceive?
I was.
Okay.
And unfortunately, I ended up with COVID in my first trimester of my
Oh,
pregnancy, and I lost our
oh,
daughter.
I'm so sorry. I'm so
So
sorry.
at this point, I am just kind of letting spirit take the wheel. We'll
Yes,
see
of
what
course.
happens because I am 8 years into that journey. And at one point, it was my husband's health that was the hurdle. And at another
Yes.
point, it was mine. And so once we finally got everything singing from the same sheet of music, we were a year into COVID. And I had a client, unfortunately, that brought me COVID at the office.
Oh, no.
And I ended up losing the baby about a week and a half, almost 2 weeks later. So
Wow. I'm
yeah, and I
so
didn't.
sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. I didn't have COVID bad, and I really thought we were going to make it unscathed out of
Mm.
the experience because both my husband and I only had about 48 hours of pretty mild symptoms, but because
Wow.
it changes the way that your circulation flows in your body, it affects your vascular system.
Yeah.
It was just too much for a developing fetus in the first trimester, unfortunately.
I'm so sorry to hear that. But The work that you do is so powerful, is so helpful for women, and let's talk a little bit more about the work that you do helping women, because it's really remarkable, and I think a lot of women need to know that they have choices. So a lot of women know about Western medicine, a lot of women know about taking medications that the doctors recommend, but they don't know there's other choices. So can you tell a little bit more about the work that you do, working with clients, maybe different things you do in a session, etc.?
Absolutely. That's the whole reason I started the Reproductive Rebel podcast. You hit the nail right on the head when you said they just don't know that there are options out there. It's really true.
Yeah.
Western medicine, like I said, if I need surgical intervention or if my arm is hanging off my body and I need to be triaged immediately, like that's where they excel. But when it comes to dealing with the fabric of why something isn't working in the body, that isn't where that toolkit excels.
Yes.
And so what do I do in my office? I do a wide range of things. I meet people where they're at. So as a certified Acutonics practitioner,
And what is that?
Acutonics,
What's Acutonics?
yep, Acutonics is actually acupuncture with sound. You're
Mm,
using tuning forks and you're applying them to the same points and meridians on the body that an acupuncturist would use needles. So it's a really great technique for people who are very needle adverse.
good.
Um, it is a practice that is a little over 30 years old. It was founded by a dean of a acupuncture school. So
Oh,
it's
wow.
very much rooted in acupuncture methodological approaches and things of that nature. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, it's probably been one of the biggest blessings that's come into my life because I wanted to go to school for acupuncture, but I really struggled with the idea of sticking needles in people.
Yeah.
And this is a very non-invasive approach. My whole practice is. And so I love the fact that I can achieve a lot of the same results that an acupuncturist can without triggering people,
Yeah.
because there are a lot of people who are very fearful or uncomfortable with the idea of needles. I mean, if you
Yes.
think about Western gynecology in general, everything is invasive. The tools
Mm,
go in, the
mhm.
instrument, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you're put in a very vulnerable position on your back for your exams. Like everything about the Western model tends to elicit feelings of stress for people. And
Mhm.
so this way I can do a lot of care for reproductive health in a very non-triggering kind of way. So Acutonics is one of the tools that I use for that. I am a clinical herbalist. I use Chinese herbs, Western herbs, and Ayurvedic herbs in my clinical practice work.
Wonderful.
Um, because I started as a Chinese nutritional therapist, I truly believe food is medicine.
I
And
do
so,
too.
regardless of what people come to me for in terms of other services, you always get a dose of the food is medicine
Wonderful.
conversation.
Wonderful. So
And
important. Yes.
it is so important. It's so important. And I'm also a certified pelvic steaming professional. So
Mm.
I use Korean pelvic steaming and pelvic smoking techniques
Can you
to
say a little
work
bit
with.
about what that is and what happens?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So you have two acupuncture points on your perineum. And I don't know about you, but I don't want anyone sticking needles in my perineum.
No, thank you.
The
No, thank you.
perineum is that space between your external genitalia and your anus. Okay. So that's that little stretch of skin there.
Mhm.
Not everybody knows where that is.
Yeah.
But you have two really powerful acupuncture points on your perineum. And because it's a very delicate and sensitive place, pelvic steaming and pelvic smoking both help to stimulate energy and movement of fluids and energy both through these acupuncture points, which have a really powerful impact on your central nervous system. It has an impact on essentially how everything moves along the midline of your body. It influences more than just that. Like with a pelvic steaming session, you have the ability to relax over 37 muscles in the
Wow.
body. Like it's really impressive how much work this particular modality does for people. And anyone can steam because everyone has a pelvic floor and has those same two acupuncture points. One of those acupuncture points is a really powerful one, though, and has a beautiful ability to move trauma in the body. It
Mm,
helps with emotional unraveling, whether it's pelvic trauma, sexual trauma, birth trauma. It helps when people deal with recurrent infections to drain the causes for why those kinds of things happen in the first place. It helps to move energy along the midline, which moves, if you look at the direction, it moves through your uterus, your lungs, your heart space, all the way up through the midline of your body. So you see system-wide benefits, even though you're sitting on a stool with a tea solution underneath the stool. And it seems like you're really not doing an awful lot, but it's an incredibly powerful medium. I have one of those Apple smartwatches, right? So, and I use it to like track like how is my sleep doing and stuff like that.
okay.
And one thing that is really cool about pelvic steaming is when you steam, it actually affects your blood pressure and your heart rate variability in a really
Mm,
cool way.
mm,
So I'll see a 15% increase in my heart rate variability at night and what my heart rate drop does when I go to sleep at night when I steam at night.
mm. Wow.
So there's some measurable outcomes for
Very
being
cool.
able to use this modality, and I've seen a lot of people who are starting to kind of DIY the pelvic steaming side of things.
Mhm.
And I really would advocate that you do it with a practitioner, because if you get somebody, you're getting the right herb combination, you're getting the right heat, the right duration for what
Mm,
it is that your body needs. And that way you'll be able to realize all of the benefits that you're hoping for,
mm.
rather than, ordering herbs off the internet and hoping for the best.
Yeah, kind of winging it. Yeah, I'm really
Yes.
glad you said that because there are a lot of people doing the DIY right now. And I think it is important for people to know that it really takes a lot of research and education to know what the right herbs are. And we're all individuals. Okay. We
Mhm.
all have different health histories, different chronic conditions, etc. And it's important that it be customized to you with the herbs.
Mhm.
And like you said, even getting the temperature right, that's something people may not think about. They're like, oh, you're steaming. Isn't the right temperature if it's steaming? But there is a right temperature and right herbal solution for you. So I'm so glad you explain that and how it's so beneficial for women. Because again, a lot of women may not be aware this is an option that they can try. And it is very relaxing, correct?
Oh, it's very relaxing. I bring my steam stool with me to camp. My husband and I have a seasonal in a campground, and we go and we spend most of the summer out there. And actually, the neighbors around us are starting to recognize my after steam face, because because I'll steam in the camper, right? And then I come out and, like, we sit around the fire and talk and whatever at night. And like they just look and they're like, "Oh, you steamed today, didn't you?" And I'm like, "How can you tell?" And
They could
apparently
tell.
my whole face changes because I just feel so relaxed and just carefree and
Right.
happy-go-lucky afterwards. Like, it's just, with how fast our modern world moves, there's nothing more wonderful than really truly being able to unpack and decompress. And this is one of those modalities that you can do that from the comfort of your own home, which is really lovely. And
Mm,
it's kind of like a little gynecologist in a box. You can deal with pretty much everything that deals with fertility challenges, infections, when people are having recurrent issues with infections like UTI, BV,
mm.
yeast infections. Um, I even work with men.
Oh,
So
really?
like I said, anyone, and again, I'm talking about assigned at birth, right? Male and female, but I work with all performances of identities. So
Mhm.
you've got the same two acupuncture points on your perineum. For men, it's really helpful for erectile dysfunction,
Mm,
for fertility challenges. Sometimes there are,
mm.
it's not just women who have
Yes.
fertility
Yes,
challenges.
very important. We emphasize that women get a lot of the blame if not being able to conceive, but it takes two. And so
Absolutely.
men must be conscious too. So I'm very happy that you are bringing light to that and helping men too with fertility issues.
Mm-hmm. And couples can steam together and
Yeah.
they both have benefits. I've seen increases in semen analysis counts, morphology and motility improvement, all of that type of stuff, when they're using steam appropriately with a practitioner who knows what they're doing, because you do have to steam men in a very specific way. But it's beneficial for everyone. Everything I do in my practice is beneficial for both, but I really feel like women are gaslit and don't
Yes.
have as much of a voice in the
Yes.
medical space. And so that's really where my heart song is being able to really sit with women, see them and hear them in a way that they're not getting from other practitioners.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. That really resonates with me, with my health journey. I was gaslit by so many medical professionals for years. I had a chronic illness for 15 years that was misdiagnosed for 14 years. And it was very difficult to be just told, oh, you're just depressed. Oh, just have some fun and you'll be fine. I'm like, I've got physical symptoms. I'm not just making this up in my head. I'm a very optimistic person. I'm a very positive, happy person. Something is physically wrong. Please help me. And a lot of women are going through this these days. Unfortunately, they are being gaslit because a lot of health conditions that women go through are not understood. And because they're not understood by Western medicine, then Western medical professionals are saying it's not really happening. You're making it up, you're exaggerating, you're too emotional, they're gaslighting. And so it's very important for women to be aware of this. And if you do realize that your medical professional is gaslighting you, go to someone else. Go to someone like Adrienne who can hear you, who can see you, who can really hold space for you. This is so important. We cannot heal with somebody who's not taking us in fully. We cannot heal if we are being put down. We need to feel empowered with our health and wellness. And that's also why I wanted to have the show, is to empower women with their choices, to let them know about different healing modalities, to let them know about the root causes of different conditions. Like you just so beautifully described, you developed a heart attack from taking birth control for over 10 years. And so this is very important for women to understand that, yes, there are root causes to every chronic condition, and even medications can cause health conditions. And again,
Absolutely.
doctors, unfortunately, will not educate you about this so you can make informed decisions. So we really need to send this information far and wide. So I hope the people watching this episode will share this. Is so important what we talked about today, because there's so many young girls being given birth control at a very young age, and then for most of their lives until they decide to conceive. And I will be talking about this more in my book series, because I have seen, by going through different interviews and really going deep with the women who shared their stories so beautifully, that women are developing chronic conditions in pregnancy because of taking birth control so long. And that's affecting their labor, affecting their postpartum. So lastly, I want to wrap up the interview. So again, I could talk to you all day, but can you say a little bit more about birth control and what you want the audience to know about birth control?
Birth control is a very misunderstood creature. I think that's probably the best way to start. Birth control is a drastically misunderstood creature. We collectively have a misconception that when you are on birth control, it is regulating your cycle. Man, if I had a nickel for every time I heard someone say that, and I'd be a very rich woman. I wouldn't need to work. And it doesn't regulate anything. It stops our normal hormone expression.
Yes.
And we have a withdrawal bleed. We do not have a period. And because it arrests our hormone expression, it makes it so that in the early stages of young women beginning their cycling lives, it can take up to 5 years for the body to practice this process of hitting all of these hormonal marks all through the month in order to execute the cycle efficiently and effectively every single month. When you throw in a medication that disrupts that communication, it never practices and comes online appropriately. That has long-term consequences. We're
Yeah.
starting to see research that's coming out that talks about changes in bone density for women who have taken birth control for prolonged periods of time. You had made a statement that I so resonated with, where you said that, you know, there isn't enough out there. We don't have a really good understanding of women's reproductive health. And we don't, because less than 5% of the NIH budget is designated to women's health related anything.
Wow.
And then you
Crazy.
also have to look at what is the question that the researcher is asking. Is
Right.
this question that the researcher is asking even relevant
Right.
to
What are they
what
looking for? Are,
exactly?
are they
And is
looking
it
for another medication to create? Or are they looking for how to treat this naturally, or really what the root cause is so that it can be prevented?
correct? And I think that's one of the most fundamental differences between Chinese medicine and Western medicine is Chinese medicine is a root and branch theory approach, meaning there is a thing that started the dominoes falling over
Yes,
that gives you all the symptoms that you're experiencing. Whereas Western medicine goes, you have a symptom, I have a pill for that.
exactly. Or
And then
surgery.
when that, right. And if that pill has a side effect, I got a pill for that.
Exactly. So then you're going
And
to be
that
on
doesn't work.
possibly a lot of pills.
A lot of pills, and then when those don't work, then surgery, right?
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
we don't have a really good understanding. Like looking towards ancient traditions, that's thousands of years of observational data to understand, coming out of religions where it was against the religion to actually cut into the body. They
Oh.
have a much more sophisticated understanding of the interworkings of the human body, which only end up being confirmed by Western medicine when they cut into the body later on. Except the
Mm,
understanding is very narrow in scope, just like the fact that you have a doctor for your ear, nose, and throat, you have a doctor for your reproductive system, but that person who delivered your baby isn't going to be able to help you nurse your baby because that requires a different person, right?
right.
So you end up being, again, ingredients in a cookie instead of all one person. Whereas, the interconnectedness is actually why root and branch theory in a lot of ways works better,
Yes.
because you can see, like, what is it that was that first piece that started having everything fall over. We
Yes.
can deal with all of those symptoms if we nourish the reason and support the reason that this all started happening in the first place. It's a very, very different approach to care. However, it feels better. You are in more right relationship with who you are and how you want to move through the world when you care for yourself in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where birth control literally is just an interrupt in the system, and it doesn't help bring you into right relationship. And there are so many negative side effects. It is one of the
Yes.
only medications, if not the only medication, that has a black warning product label. You
Wow.
see black labels on cigarettes, folks.
I didn't know there was a black label on birth
Yes,
control.
because
Wow.
it can cause blood clots, it can
Yes.
cause heart attacks, it can, like, the list of very serious side effects is very long.
Yeah.
And
Scary.
if you're on it, this is not to shame you for making that decision. You made the best
Uh,
decision you could with the information that you had, but I encourage you to read the rice paper insert.
yes. Yes. Well said. And just to say very briefly, I did have a friend who was a smoker. That's one of the reasons why I asked you if you were a smoker. And she did develop blood clots. So she had to go to the ER because she started bruising. She actually saw evidence of the blood clots on her skin.
Mm.
It's scary stuff, people. It's scary. So we really need to look up medications. We need to do the research. We need to be informed consumers and just know that unfortunately, Western medicine, our doctors are not going to always spell out all the side effects. Even the pharmacist is not going to say, I don't think you should be on this longer than a year. So it really is up to us to make the best decisions for us. So, where can people go, Adrienne, to learn more about the work that you do and to potentially work with you?
Absolutely. The best place to find me is on Instagram. My handle is Moon Essence Me, ME. Um, You can also see my website, which is moonessence.life, or you can check me out on my podcast, Reproductive Rebel, which is found on all platforms that you can listen to your favorite podcasts.
Yes, beautiful. So everyone definitely go to the description below, click on all those links, check out her podcast. I listened the other day. Fabulous, great information. And I love that you are a health disruptor. I think it was the name given to you. So you are really bringing the truth out there and you're not afraid to ruffle some feathers. So it's important to get the true facts and understanding. And so listen to Adrienne's podcast to learn more. So thank you, Adrienne. This has been an absolute pleasure. Again, I could talk and talk and talk. And thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you so much for the work that you do. For all of you who are watching, please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Please share this video because there's so much juice in this video, so much for women to know about, a lot of information, very important information we share today. And you can also leave a comment, leave a question. If you have a question, we will circle back and answer that for you. And also, if you'd like to learn more about the work that I do, you can go to www.thedancingcurtain.com. And if you would like to join my list to be notified when my book series has launched, you can go to www.thedancingcurtain.com/gethealthy. If you join, then you will be notified of the 3-book series and also about upcoming episodes of Holistic Me TV. So thank you again, Adrienne. This was an absolute pleasure. And of course, thank all of you for watching Holistic Me TV.